Welcome to this tutorial on Android development for the Kindle Fire. So the first thing you want to do if you don't have it already is get Eclipse, and you want the Eclipse IDE for Java developers. So download that for your environment and get it installed. Once you've downloaded and installed it, like in this case I've just dragged the Eclipse folder that I unzipped to my desktop, and you can launch Eclipse. On the Mac it's just as simple as launching the eclipse.app. When you do this, for the first time, you'll be asked to select a workspace. I'm just going to say, uses El Moroni or uses whatever your name /documents/workspace is my default. I'm going to say OK to that, and then Eclipse itself will launch. Now, when you're using Eclipse, one of the really nice things about it is that it gives you the facility to install new software. And this is what you're going to be using to install the software from Google that gives you the Eclipse SDK, and which gives you the Eclipse SDK, the Android SDK, and it gives you the Android emulators that will be able to use. So what you do on the available software is you just click Add and you give it a name, and then you got to give it a location. The location for the Android SDK and the Android Developers Toolkit is at https://dl-ssl.google.com/android/eclipse. So you enter that into the location and say OK. Now the install dialog is going to be pending for a moment, and then you'll see this developer tools gets added. I'm just going to drop that down, and you can see all the different things that are available to you. I'm just going to select them all and say next to install them. Now you can see Eclipse will check all your dependencies, see what's available to you, say yep, you can install all of these, click next, and now you'll see that these are the licenses and the notes and exceptions around the licenses. I'm just going to say I accept the licenses, and you'll see they're all accepted here, and I'm just going to say finish, and now Eclipse will install all the software for me. So when it's done, you'll see this message asking you to restart Eclipse. So I'm going to go ahead and restart Eclipse, and now Eclipse has reloaded. So now once you're done with all of that one, all you need to do is go up to Window and pick the Android SDK Manager. If I select the Android SDK Manager, now it's going to show me the Android SDKs that are available to me. It's going to take a moment to load these. And when it's done, you can see these are the SDKs that are actually installed right now. You can see I have Android 403 Ice Cream Sandwich installed here. But what you're going to do for whatever your device that you're building for, you can pick the actual version of Android for that. The most common one is Android 2.1. Something like 97% of devices according to Android use that. But the important thing to note, as you're an Android developer, you'll tend to see people talking about numbers rather than version, like API 7, API 8, or this is the API level. And something like the Kindle is built using API level 10, which although the Kindle's based on 2.3.4, the 2.3.3 is close enough, and that's API level 10, and that will allow you to install API level 10 stuff. There's some other stuff here that I'm not going to need, like the dual screen APIs and the Real 3D, and I'm just turning them off because it takes a little bit longer to install if I have them on. So I'm just going to pick the SDK platform and the Google APIs for Android 2.3.3. The Google APIs actually aren't available if you're a Kindle developer, but I'm going to leave them in if I want to build for other Android devices using 2.3.3. So just pick the ones that you want and say install the number of packages. And on here you got a chance, you can review each one by one and accept them, or you can just click accept all. I'm clicking accept all and going ahead with my install. Now this can take a few minutes, so we'll see you on the other side. Okay, so once it's done, you can now just close this down, and let's create a new project. So with Eclipse I can say File, New Project, and under the project menu you'll see there's Android types. I'm going to select an Android project. Say next. I'm going to give it a name. I'll just say hello Kindle. Create a new project, use default location, just keep all the defaults. Here I can specify my target. You can see by default it's 4.0.3, but I want to target 2.3.3, which is API level 10. I'm going to say next, and then here I give my app name, and then I have a package name. So package name is just reverse domain name. So I'm going to say tv.netnavi.hello Kindle. Keep all the rest. Remember, it's SDK version 10. That's why it's sometimes a little bit confusing. You've been seeing 2.3.3 and 2.3.4, and always the thing to remember is the SDK level. So it's SDK level 10. I'm not going to create a test project, and Eclipse has gone ahead and done its thing called Hello Kindle. But before I can run it, I need to set up an emulator that I can run it on, and I want to set up an emulator that closely mimics the Kindle Fire. So if you go to the window menu, now you see this thing called AVD Manager, and that's Android Virtual Device Manager, in other words, emulators. So select that one and you can see a list of Android virtual devices. Now you won't have the Amazon device set up because this is one that I set up earlier, so you'd have to go in and press new to create one, but I'll show you the settings that I used. So first of all, you give it a name. I called it an Amazon device. You give it a target. We're back to the API level again, API level 10. You emulate an SD card. This one's huge. I give it an 8 gig SD card. You don't need it to be that big. The important thing here is your resolution. You don't want to use the built-in. You want to create a default resolution and 600 by 1024 to approximately emulate what the Kindle Fire is going to look like. So once that's done, you would create a new one, and then you'd see the new one on the list. And when you get a little green checkbox like this, you can see it's a valid Android virtual device. So when you do that, now your actual application, in this case Hello Kindle, you can run it. So I'm going to go ahead and run mine. It asks me a way to run it. I'm going to say I want to run it as an Android application, say OK to that, and it will launch your emulator. That can be a slow process, but you can see here it's launching it, and that can take a few moments. It's cropped off at the bottom by the screen because I'm recording in 1024 by 768, and this is 1024 pixels high. So if I move it around, you can see it's cropped off at the bottom. But just give it a moment to start up, and then we'll see on the other side. And here we can see now that my application has run. My Hello World, Hello Kindle activity is now running. So I'm emulating a Kindle Fire. Effectively, my emulator is an API level 10 emulator with roughly the same screen coordinates as a Kindle Fire. I won't have any of the other goodness of a Kindle Fire on there, like the Silk browser and all that kind of stuff. That's not available for emulation yet. But this is just an example so you can see how the emulator can be used within Eclipse. So for the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to take a break from Eclipse for a moment. We're going to go to the Kindle Fire, and I'll show you how to set up the Kindle Fire itself so that you can sideload applications onto it. Okay, for this part of the presentation, crudely filmed with an iPhone camera, I'm just going to show a little bit how to set up a Kindle Fire so that you can sideload applications onto it and to be able to test your application. In this case, without going through the App Store, you're going to sideload them on. So the first thing that you should do is on the App Store for Android, and here you can see my application actually running, but the first thing that you should do is on the App Store for the Android, you need to install a file manager. So I'm going to select the file manager that I'm using is this one, and I can't remember what it's called. So what I'm just going to do is go in here and take a look at the About dialog, and you can see I'm using the ES File Explorer, which you can get freely in the Android App Store. So install that as a file manager, and what that does is allows you to browse the contents of your SD card. And when you sideload your application onto your SD card, then you'll just use the file manager to actually install it. And the way that you can do this is if I go back to my home screen, and so you go into the App Store and install the actual manager. But to be able to sideload, there's one other thing that you need to do, and that's go to your settings. So if I pick my settings and I go to more, under the more settings you will see a device entry. I'm going to select device. And under device, you will see there's this allow installation of applications. You want that to be on so that you can sideload applications onto your Fire. You'll get this warning when you turn it on, and the warning is like saying, your Kindle and your personal data are less secure, because if you can sideload applications, you can put anything on there without any protection. So turn it on when you're testing your application, and then turn it off immediately afterwards. So that you don't, end up being maybe clicking on a malicious link and downloading something that you might install later on. So that's it. That's all you need to do with your Kindle, and then connect it up to your PC. It'll be mounted as a drive. We'll see that back on the Camtasia in a moment. And once it's mounted as a drive, you can drag and drop the finished application onto it and then launch it from the Kindle Fire itself. And just as a quick example, there was one that I sideloaded earlier on, the Hello World. You can see this is the default Android icon. I'll select that one, and you can see the Hello World Kindle activity, and it's not coming into focus very well. I guess these things aren't very good at filming screens, but you get the idea. This is it running on the Kindle, the same thing we saw running on the emulator earlier. I'll show you how to put it on your Kindle next. So welcome back. Here you can see the application running on the emulator. You saw earlier on it in the blurry video it running on my Kindle Fire. So let's see how I got it onto the Kindle Fire and how we were able to use it. So I'm going to close that one down. And the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to go to your actual application within the navigator in Eclipse, and you want to right click on it and then come down to the Android Tools menu and say Export Signed Application Package. No Android device will run unsigned software. We're going to sign it now, but the nice thing about it is that we can sign it with like a debug certificate, so it's effectively a fake certificate, but at least it's been signed, so the Android device will run it. When you deploy to an application store like the Android App Store or the Amazon App Store for Android, you'll have to get a real key, and we'll show how to do that in a future tutorial. But for now, I'm just going to say I'm exporting Hello Kindle, and then it'll give you a key store. So what you want to do is create a new key store. And I'm going to create a new key store, and you have to use these settings. So I'm going to call it debug.keystore. And then the password for this is Android. So do that and select next, and then you'll see the key alias that you have to create. So the key alias that you should use is Android debug key. There are two D's there. Android debug key. The password for this one is Android. The validity is in years. It has to be at least 25 years or you'll get a warning. And then you can just put various, your name, organizational unit, that kind of thing. I'm going to say NetNavi Development is my unit. My organization is netnavi.tv. State of locality is Issaquah, Washington. Country code 01. I believe 01 is the US, but it doesn't seem to validate beyond that. When you're creating a new key, you're going to have to. So I'm going to say next, and then it's going to ask for the destination APK file. An APK file is a compiled, signed Android application. So I'm just going to say browse to here, and it's going to ask where do I want to put it. It's going to call it Hello Kindle. I'm just going to stick it on my desktop, and I'm going to save. Then I'm going to click finish, and Eclipse will go off and compile it, and we'll bundle it up, and it's off screen at the moment, but I'll bring it on screen, and there it is, hellokindle.apk. So I now have my finished application that I can run on my Kindle device. So let's hook up the Kindle device and see what happens. So once I've connected my Kindle via USB, you can see on my devices here, there is a Kindle, and these are the folders on my Kindle's SD card. So I'm just, you can put it in any folder. I'm just going to put hellokindle.apk into my documents folder. And I had one there already, so I'm just going to say replace the older one with this one, and it's been copied, and now it's available for me to run on Android. I'm going to go back to the shaky, blurry iPhone video in a moment, just to show how it runs. But that's it. I've now side-loaded my application onto my Kindle so I can test it. In future videos, we'll see then how you can build an application and deploy it via the App Store, so then people will get a real one. But for basic testing on your Kindle, this is all you had to do. I didn't do any Java coding in this one, so I just have the Hello World app. But any Java coding tutorials, any Android coding tutorials, you could add to this and be able to use those applications on your Kindle. And I'll do a simple one in my next video. Okay, so I'm now back on my Kindle Fire. I've disconnected it from my machine, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch the file manager that we had installed earlier on, and within the file manager, it's kind of hidden at the moment because there's that moon behind it, but you can see there's a documents folder, and if you remember, we copied it to the documents folder, the APK that is, and we go down, you can see the APK, hellokindle.apk is right there, so I'm going to touch that. And then it's going to ask, do you want to install this application? So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say, yep, I want to install it. It's going to install. We can see application install there. And if I go back to the home screen, we can now see that my application is present, the Android application. And I can touch that and launch it. And we'll see there, Hello World, Hello Kindle activity has actually been launched. And that's it. We've built and sideloaded an application, and you're now ready to start developing for Android, and in future videos we'll see how to go properly through the App Store so you don't have to sideload. And when you're done with all this, don't forget to just turn off the setting that allowed you to sideload applications, and remember that again was in Settings, More, Device, Allow Installation of Applications. Turn that off and your Kindle's nice and safe again. Thank you.